This is the Minding Your Own Business podcast, brought to you by Elder Research. Each episode will bring in data and analytics gurus from around the world as they regale us with their data analytics stories and enlighten us with their secrets for how to turn data into actionable insights. Now, here's our host, Evan Wimpey, who will guide us as we dare to mind our own business.
Hello and welcome to the Minding Your Own Business podcast. I'm your host, Evan Wimpey. Today, very excited to introduce our guest, Bill Shube. Bill is the Senior Manager for America's Supply Chain Operations Technology for the LEGO Group. You might have heard LEGO. You might even be stepping on some in this post-Christmas season, as I know I am. Bill, thanks so much for coming on the show. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm thrilled to be here, actually. I mean, yeah, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Hey, Bill, to get started, can you give us a little bit about your own background and where you sit today?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the LEGO Group now for about 11 years, pretty much always in supply chain analytics. I'm also in the process of starting up my own supply chain analytics business on the side called Supply Chain Watchtower. I'm hoping to help smaller manufacturers and distributors gain better visibility into the health of their inventory. And so on that point, I do have a little bit of fine print I want to hit on. I'm not here on behalf of the LEGO Group. I'm here on behalf of myself and my business, Supply Chain Watchtower. But of course, all my experiences with the LEGO Group at this point. So that's what I'm going to be drawing from. So that's me. And fine print out of the way. Let's talk about data.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. Always happy to talk about data, and we'll make sure we throw a link to your website there. Or any links that you've got in the show notes. Can you talk about, you've been there 11 years, I think. Can you talk about your role now and maybe just sort of give us a lot of folks think Lego and they think as consumers and building and having fun. Can you talk about sort of what it is that you do in supply chain there and maybe an example or two of projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, of course. So in the supply chain, this is kind of the nerdy side of the LEGO Group, of course. And supply chain ops technology. We're really, my team is a team of citizen developers. We're all business users. And our job is mainly to provide data and analytics support to the rest of our supply chain ops organization that covers supply planning and demand planning, distribution, logistics, order management, that kind of thing. And so to give you maybe kind of a better sense of what it is that we do, and I should call out, I know you usually you have data science folks on this podcast. We're not a data science team. We're just kind of, as I said, citizen developers, business users. To give an example, I'll maybe kind of throw out what started all of this for me, which was back in 2019 when I joined the demand planning team at Supply Chain Ops. And we had just gone through some reorganization in demand planning, and we didn't really have anything in the way of kind of standard reporting for us. We were kind of borrowing from other groups. We had one thing that was kind of clunky, but nothing really, not really what we needed. And so, and I had a reporting background. So my manager tapped me, said, "Here, you go build us some reporting." And in my previous life in reporting, I was one of those guys who would just, try to stuff as much data as I could into Excel, write some VBA and
Sure.
hope it doesn't break. Right. And those things, they always break, and it stinks, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I tried to find, a different way of doing it. I'd heard of Power BI, started tinkering with that a little bit, didn't quite get what I needed to out of it. And then I landed on Alteryx, and just it changed everything. And Alteryx is basically drag and drop, no code, analytics and ETL software. So it allowed me to build my own data pipelines without knowing the code, which I didn't know. I knew a little bit of VBA, and that was pretty much it. Within a pretty short amount of time, I was able to build out a data model that was kind of a one-stop shop for our team. It had just about everything we needed in it, and I was able to to write the data to write into Tableau because the data set was too big for Excel, and it was mostly automated. It was really just kind of a few button pushes here and there, so very limited data prep involved, and it was a real game changer for us. And leadership got wind of it and said, well, how can we bring this to the rest of supply chain ops? And so that became kind of a side project that led into our current team, which, as I said, our job is to basically do that, to build, data pipelines and analytics to help improve the data work that goes on in our supply chain ops organization.
Awesome. Bill, that's a great story. I love, your leadership catches wind, and the answer is, this has been successful. How do we scale this to more teams? How do we make this more impactful versus why aren't we using this centralized IT tool or whatever that we already have? Was there any flavor of that, or it was sort of this was already successful? Great. Let's keep momentum.
So from our side of things, on the business side, there was no flavor of that, because it was well known that our business warehouse, that was our main source of data, just wasn't delivering what we needed. Right? It's kind of like the typical problem that a lot of organizations run into. It's very siloed data. When I built this pipeline, I was pulling from about a dozen different data sources to make it all happen. And I had been doing that kind of thing in Excel, and with that many data sources, you just can't make it happen in Excel very easily, and it gets messy. And so this new way of doing things really helped really helped kind of like remove a lot of the barriers that you usually run into in that regard. Did get some questions from the IT side of things, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit later. But but it was super helpful to have the support of my leadership, because they were able to twist some arms when IT said, "Are you sure we should be doing this?" And they said, "No, we need to keep doing this. This is working for us."
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And you used the term earlier, citizen development, and that seems sort of like this specific use case of you identifying a problem, identifying a tool that can help, and sort of building the solution. Can you speak maybe generally what is citizen development, and is that sort of a theme?
Yeah. So I don't know that there is a specific definition of citizen development. For me, citizen development is where business users, non-tech users who don't know code, use no code and low code tools to do work that otherwise would require involvement from a tech team.
Yeah. And, when I think about other folks that have been on the show, a common thread is how do, thinking from the data and analytics team perspective, how do you organize? Are analysts embedded in a business? Is there some centralized team? And so citizen development, it seems to me like it's sort of the bottom up, most dispersed, like the people that are closest to the actual problem are the ones sort of driving the development solutions.
Absolutely. And for me, that's a really huge benefit that you get out of citizen development. There's a lot of benefits that I found that you get out of it. And if you go kind of, reading about citizen development, you'll see a lot of things, especially, the software vendors, they all tout all the, the time savings that you can get, the cost reduction, the revenue increases, right? Improved accuracy. There's a whole bunch of kind of quantifiable metrics that they'll talk about. And I do think that all those benefits are real. My experience, we've saved thousands of hours for supply chain ops per year. We've spotted millions of dollars worth of planning errors. We've built reporting like what I just described that wasn't even possible previous to, prior to us doing this work. And, and so that's all, it's all well and good. I think there's really some great, very tangible benefits. But to your point, there's kind of the softer benefits, like for me, the hidden benefits like that, like, bringing the end users, the people who know the problem intimately, enabling them to actually do the problem themselves. Things like that really are, for me, a huge benefit of citizen development.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you've mentioned this is sort of scaled. I suspect you're not the only citizen developing. How does it sort of spread? How does it work within your team? Do you sort of give access to tools and then say, good luck?
I mean, at first, yeah, that is kind of how it started for us. And I should say, the way we started our citizen development journey was very much a bottom up movement where, it was me, it was, my colleagues, a couple of colleagues who introduced me to Alteryx, and then, a few other pockets of the organization, all, doing this kind of work, and Alteryx, Power BI, Power Platform as well. Um, and, and us just kind of feeling our way and really kind of taking IT, I think, a little bit by surprise. They at first they didn't really know what to do with us. I would say, they would, when I started doing this work, I had to like get in touch with the guy who was managing a SQL server. He's like, you want space in my SQL server? Really? Because you're just a business analyst. What are you doing here? No, really, I need this. I need this access. And then other IT folks kind of periodically the first year or two I was doing this would kind of call me up and say, can you show us what you're doing? Cause they'd act like they were, just curious, but I always got the sense that there was some underlying concern. And, and, and I keep running into that actually. I found that citizen development does kind of make people in IT a little bit nervous. Um, Part of it is just, I think, you know, fear of the unknown and concerns over data security. And I think they're very right to have those concerns. Um, but, but as I've talked to them more about it, I'm finding that it has a lot to do with governance. And so when you mention scalability, um, it's one thing to have a couple of users doing this stuff on the side and, you can just kind of let them go and do their thing. But if you really want to scale this across an organization, especially a large organization like the Lego Group, you really need good governance. And when IT was showing these concerns, they were really basically, I think, concerned that we were going to develop our own kind of Wild West of data, where we'd be, making our own apps and data flows, people duplicating effort, building the same thing in different places, right? Making things that are too big to fail, leaving apps running on a schedule when they're no longer needed, no documentation, right? Exposing sensitive data, right? All these things that IT, worries about and has, governing principles already in place to manage. They're worried that we're going to go and do all that stuff. And they're very right to be worried because, left unchecked, we citizens will absolutely do those things. I have done almost everything that I just mentioned. I have not exposed sensitive data, but everything else I've done at least once. And and the thing is that for citizen developers, we have to remember. So IT kept coming to me and asking, "What are you doing?" And it got kind of frustrating because it really felt like they wanted to shut me down. And maybe they did a little bit, but that I've come to realize that these tech teams have spent years and decades developing these best practices to prevent behaviors from like this, right? To ensure data security and prevent tech debt, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've come to see those these governance initiatives as a good thing. You need governance to enable your citizens. Otherwise you are going to end up with a Wild West scenario.
Can you talk about sort of how you came back from those? If you made a mistake and you're using bad data or you're duplicating efforts, what's sort of the resolution there? Are you self-correcting? Or is the calls from IT are about specific instances? Or Bill, what's going on with this?
Yeah, no. So for us, we are self-correcting and that's just kind of a function of the way that we started. Again, we started, very much ground up. This was not, we didn't go into it intentionally saying we're going to set up a citizen development regime, right? We went into it saying, I need to fix this reporting and demand planning. And then, oh, by the way, there's this other reporting in these other parts of the organization that also stink. Let's go and fix those. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, we realized, oh, we're citizen developers. Right. And as we realized that, and as, we moved from just kind of me doing this to a little project team doing this to an actual part of, an actual, official team with a leader and everything. When we got to that point, we realized we needed to clean house. And so we started, as a team, we just started figuring out what is it we need to do. We need to go back and we need to document the hell out of all of our applications that we didn't document and figure out what they're doing. And we need to audit all of our stuff and make sure that our schedules are running optimally and we didn't leave stuff running that we don't need anymore. We realized we realized the hard way that we needed to do this. Things just got too big, and so we put it upon ourselves. If you read kind of what's going on in the industry in this regard, there's a lot of best practices that I think you can, when it comes to, it kind of comes along with governance, you can drop in there to prevent these kinds of situations. In particular, one thing I've seen that actually we are doing in the Lego group, not more in the Power Platform area where I don't do so much work, but it's you set up a user community. And it's kind of a partnership between the tech team, the platform team that owns the platform, and super users, and then all the other users. And right, and so the tech team should be hosting this. Have a Teams channel and host monthly meetings to just kind of show off functionality and hold office hours and that kind of thing. And it's just kind of reading some of the literature out there, it sounds like a lot of organizations that do that have had a lot of success, in terms of getting people to follow follow the governing principles, and adhere to best practices. It's a good way to kind of communicate all this out to all the user base, and make sure it's presented in a way that's easily digestible, right? It's not just coming from the tech teams who maybe sound a little scolding, right? You should be documenting your workflows. It's also coming from the super users who are, just business users who just use it a lot, right? And so they can make it much more relatable.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot. And, sort of typically thinking about it from the other perspective, from the IT or like sort of data science analytics side that's coming into the business, we sort of think about that challenge too, of how do we communicate, how do we get on the same page here so that folks will use this and they will use best practices for whatever this output tooling is. And so it really seems similar there, just maybe more of the burden, more of the technical effort is from the business user, instead of submitting a bunch of backlogs that the centralized team is likely never going to get to.
Yes. And actually that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the other benefits that I see in citizen development is a shift in responsibilities away from our tech teams and onto the business teams in a very beneficial manner. So if you think about the way that tech implementations often happen and often go wrong, right? Like a lot goes wrong in tech implementations, and it has a lot to do with shocking, right?
Never.
Right. And right. And a lot of it comes down to the communication that takes place between the tech teams and the business teams, right? They don't communicate well. And so the way it usually goes is, business team says, oh, we've got this idea. We need this new thing to be developed. It has this technological component. They call it IT. And they try to explain it. They're vague. It's kind of half baked. They're not very good at explaining exactly what they need. They don't quite know what they need because it's still kind of abstract. And so IT then, tries to gather their requirements and has this whole routine where they get the business requirements. And then, and then business says, okay, well, that's all you need to know. Go and do it for us. Right. And then, I feel bad for IT, right? They've got to go and find the data. They've got to figure out how to interpret it. They've got to figure out how to model it and how to build the pipelines. And then they've got to build the front end. And it's a lot to do. And they don't have the business expertise to know exactly, what it is that's needed at the end of the day. And, right. And so, and this is where the miscommunications, come in, and things get delayed, and, and they under deliver, or things fail entirely. And, right. And so that's kind of the old way. And, and the reason that we have to do it that way, I think, this is my theory anyway, is that the code is just such a barrier to entry, that it's easier to say, okay, IT, you need to understand the business, rather than going to business and saying, okay, business, you got to learn the code to help them out. Right. It's easy. Like I can explain, I'm in supply chain. I can explain supply chain in 3 sentences. We make things, we put those things into boxes, and we ship them. Right. And I'm being a little,
got it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a little, right. It's more complicated than that. I can hear, supply chain folks squirming at that, but that's essentially what we do. And, and the rest are details about like trucking and warehouses and, manufacturing machines. It's all kind of tangible things that, most people can grasp, whereas the code is abstract, the data is abstract. It just becomes very hard for, to get business people to grasp it. And so we just kind of say, okay, IT has to go do all of this. And you can see where I'm going with this, right? When you don't have to write the code, it becomes much easier to shift the responsibility onto the business. So, so now the business can say, we've got this idea for this thing that we need. Here's the data that we need to make it happen. IT, go and expose this data, make it accessible to us. We will figure out how to interpret it, model it, and build the front end, right? And so from an IT perspective, that's like right in their wheelhouse. That's just data engineering. They know how to do that. They could, do it in their sleep. From a business perspective, it's not as hard as it sounds because, interpreting the data, this is the data that they work with all the time in their business anyway. So there's no, right. So they know what they're looking at, right? They might not be used to looking at it, in the tables, but they'll figure that out and they'll get used to it. And then the modeling without the code, they're doing a lot of this modeling anyway. They're just doing it in Excel. Right now, so now they've got more robust tools that allow them to, to do proper ETL operations and model the data the way that they need it. And then, on the front end side of things, again, they don't have to write code. They can just drag and drop tooling into an application or visual, whatever it is that they need and because they're experts in the business processes they're trying to support with these tools, they can just tinker and iterate until they find something that works. And so it's like I said, you get really much better alignment of responsibilities. Everything kind of ends up in, in each group's wheelhouse much more neatly.
Wow. I that's a very appealing explanation. Yeah. I absolutely, I buy into that. And, maybe supply chain or whatever the business is not always so simple, but at least at a surface level, you can, with a couple of bullet points, you can, okay, I can make sense out of this. I've got the data. I'm an IT person. I'll figure this out. But the nuance and the actual understanding of the business is a lot harder to get. And so, yeah, shifting that to the business to be able to give them the tools they need. I think that's really appealing. Bill, have you, I know your wheelhouse is in supply chain at Lego. Have you seen citizen development take off in other functions in Lego, in other ops or manufacturing or marketing or sales or anywhere else?
We're still pretty young, pretty new along the journey of our citizen development movement, I would say. I have seen it in some of our manufacturing operations really done excellently. And then in BI too, the guy who introduced me to Alteryx in the first place was just a wizard in BI. But it's really applicable anywhere we're using data, right? Like it's just, it's another way to work with data. So it's really kind of a question of time when, as this kind of starts to permeate the organization, our IT organization also needs to kind of get a little bit more, kind of wrap their heads around it a little bit better. They're still trying to figure out how they want to enable this. And once that happens, I can really see it taking off. And then the other challenge is that people have to just recognize that they have problems that maybe they don't realize are problems, and and be willing and interested to try new ways of solving those problems, right? Because Excel, right, Excel is everywhere, right? And everyone is, everyone can seem kind of happy with it, right? Because they don't know any better in some cases, right? So like I talked to another manufacturer recently, and they are a mid-sized manufacturer locally. They are running their S&OP processes out of Excel. And when I asked, I just talked to the VP, I asked him, exactly what they're doing. And he said, oh, we've got this Excel lady and she's written all this VBA and she's pulling from 100 different, Excel files, and it's all automated. It takes her 4 hours a month to do it. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, that's good for Excel lady. But, what happens when she retires, right? That's, you can't scale that kind of solution. But he was perfectly happy with it. And there was no way I was going to convince him that he should be doing something different. I didn't even try, right? Because if you don't if you don't know there's a problem, then you're not going to try and fix it. But so really, it's there's a mindset change that needs to take place. That yes, Excel is a great tool, but there are now other great tools that you and the business can use to to automate yourselves without the help from IT, and and make yourselves even better and more efficient.
Awesome. With a lot more structure and scalability than Excel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Bill, you made clear, you're not data science, analytics, machine learning type of background. Do you still have those use cases that you need to go to another team? I'm thinking like a lot of reporting, a lot of data modeling, but is there any like predictive or prescriptive or machine learning modeling that sort of your business would have an appetite for? And is that available in these tools, or is that something that you would need to to go elsewhere within the company?
For now, that those kinds of things go elsewhere, but we would love to start doing that. Actually, Alteryx offers a whole suite of no code predictive analytics tools, machine learning tools, time series forecasting, all that kind of thing. And and we'd love to do it. The main reason that we're not is that we've just found so much very valuable low hanging fruit in just getting our basic data foundations in order, and supporting our team in the daily operational reporting that they do. There's this whole suite of shadow reporting that takes place because, as I mentioned earlier, our business warehouse doesn't fully support our needs in the business. And so in the absence of support, people just kind of figured out other ways to do it. And with their limited skill sets. And I don't mean that as a to disparage my colleagues. I've got great colleagues and they're super smart people. They're just not all they're not all data analysts, right? This is kind of like a side gig that a lot of them have to do to get their job done. And so those things just keep coming our way. Eventually as I said, we'd love to get into it. We have taken some training, and I have in prior years, I have learned a little bit of R, I've learned a little Python, right? And so we do have the capabilities. It's just it's finding that use case that's compelling enough that we need to prioritize it, but not quite compelling enough for our central teams to want to bother with it.
Sure. Gotcha.
And
yeah.
and that's really, then I should say that's a really great, that's kind of like the sweet spot for citizen development in general is, right? Something that's worthwhile for us to spend time on, but not worthwhile for our global, IT, BI, data science teams to work on. There's a lot that falls into that category, a surprising amount. And that's really where citizen development really shines.
That is a really good heuristic and way to think about it. Bill, I would say maybe as a final question, let's sort of ignore any of the constraints about timeliness or prioritization. And let's just say it's the Bill Shube show and everybody is aligned to your vision and you get to pick, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to work on this. Say, okay, Bill, that's it. Where do you point? Where do you point efforts?
Yeah. You told me you were going to ask this question and I'm still having a hard time answering it. But I'll try. So one of the things that we struggle most with is data access. I mentioned earlier, IT wasn't quite ready for us to be doing this stuff, and they're getting there. But but if I had my way and I could push people around like that, I would. We've had some experience where we've actually had access to some of our backend SAP tables, and it was really kind of eye-opening what we could do with access to that kind of data. We've never really had access to that kind of stuff before. And, but we don't have everything we need. And I would love to just get at all of that stuff and build out a model or a set of data models that models our supply chain. And then take those. There's some really great, natural language, querying tools out there. There's ThoughtSpot is one, Alteryx Auto Insights, where you drop a data model in there and you can put it in front of the end user and they can just ask it a regular old question and, and get their answer. And, And so if I had these data models available to me, we could do a ton of great analytical work on our own with that. But the ability to also put that in front of end users and just let them go to town, kind of to your, as we talked about earlier, getting the people who are most intimately involved in the problem, giving them the ability to solve it themselves. I feel like there'd be a ton of great stuff that would come out of that kind of setup. It takes a lot of effort to get there, but I feel like you would be able to answer a lot of questions about our business much more quickly than we're able to right now. So we can do something like that.
Awesome. I love that answer. It's almost an empower everybody to be able to answer the same question of what's the most important thing for you, for your world, for your process, and give them the ability to answer it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what citizen development is about. It's empowering the average user, right?
Awesome. Bill, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much. It's been really interesting listening to you and learning a little bit about citizen development there at the Lego Group. Bill, you've been in the Lego Group. Remind the listeners again, the name of your company.
Oh, right. Supply Chain Watchtower.
Supply Chain Watchtower.
Yes. Don't even have a website yet. I've got the URL. The website is non-existent. Maybe it will be by the time this podcast goes live. But anyone who's interested can also find me on LinkedIn, of course.
Okay, perfect. Follow Bill. If the website's not live now, it will be one day, and we'll re-release the episode. Bill, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Evan. Good to talk to you.